Welcome to episode 5 of the Movie Guide Podcast. I'm Jordan. I'm here with my excellent co-host Greg.
Hello.
And we are here recording in our great Movie Guide studio, which is also known as your bedroom in our apartment.
Yep, which is why you can hear the open window because it's hot right now.
We're very sophisticated like that. They turned our heat on for some reason, even though it's still 70 degrees outside.
Yeah, did you request that? Because
I didn't request that,
yeah,
but
they just came in. And
it was pretty hot in my bedroom last night. I was trying to go to sleep
yeah.
because we have no air conditioning anymore. Anyway, that has nothing to do with what we were talking about. Today, what we are talking about is we're continuing our countdown to Halloween. This week, we actually did come up with a topic to talk about. We've been trying to figure it out after much debate. We came up with zombie movies as our third topic. We already did classic horror movies and slasher horror movies.
And briefly interrupted for Spielberg.
Yes, Spielberg was last week. You can check all three of those things out on our YouTube channel. Jordan's Movie Guide, I think is the name of it.
We should know.
We should know, but
I think you're right.
Yeah, that is what it's called. So that's Jordan's Movie Guide on YouTube. Look for the Movie Guide podcast. We are also recording on Back to the Future Day, yet we have exactly zero discussion about Back to the Future planned, which I think is partially an oversight by me, and partially I don't like those movies very much.
You
so
don't? Oh man.
I like the first one fine. The sequels don't really do it for me, but
we'll have to we'll do a little brief segment on it next time. Maybe.
eventually maybe. But yeah, I didn't realize that was coming up until.
So why is it Back to the Future Day today? It's 2015 the whole year, or is this the actual?
This is
date?
the actual day, October 21st or whatever day it is. 2015 was the day they came back to. And
I wish I'd known that this morning. I would have slightly enjoyed my day more.
That would have made you enjoy
Yeah.
your day more?
Yeah, it's like, the day that Skynet was supposed to go live. That was kind of a cool day.
I don't remember
that. was
that.
back in like 2012 or
You're
something.
much older than I am.
Oh, shut up. Much
don't
older.
remember
Can you
that.
remember 2012?
It wasn't 2012, it was 1999 was when Skynet came from where?
No.
Was it not?
No.
Okay, maybe we need to watch Terminator movies again.
Yes, we do.
Anyway, still not having to do with what we're talking about today. But while we're talking about things that we're not actually talking about, I did want to talk a little bit about what everybody else is currently talking about, and that's this new Star Wars trailer that came out the other day.
Oh my god. I don't want to talk about that.
You don't want to talk about it?
No, well, okay. So it's... I'm just so terrified that I'm gonna see too much spoilers in a trailer somewhere or something like that.
But you didn't.
Not in this last one. This last one was...
It's a fantastic trailer.
It filled in a few more characters. I didn't really know who the bad guy of this movie was going to be, and we get to see the bad guy this time.
It whet my thirst for some Star Wars a little
It
bit.
did, and in fact, I will say this for it. After watching that trailer, I went and watched the battle scene at the beginning of the Revenge of the Sith. Because it's a space battle, and I was crazy. So my point was is that it reignited it to the point where I was willing to go out or wanted to go out and watch some Star Wars. Even something as we all agree, as atrocious as the first prequels there.
Well, I did the same thing. I went through my little collection, and I said whichever one comes up first is the one I'm going to watch. The first one that came up was Episode 3, was Revenge of the Sith.
Oh, did you really? Okay.
And
because I heard you watching it over there. I just didn't know which one you were watching.
I watched some of it. I had to skip about half the movie.
Yeah, well, I did that very thing. I watched the first sequence where, they crash the ship or whatever, and then I scanned through, because I knew, there's not a lot going on for a little bit, and I scanned through, and it was people talking in big rooms after people talking.
Wait, which
in
one
big
did you
rooms.
watch?
Third, Revenge of the Sith.
Oh, I thought you said you watched Return of the Jedi.
No,
So-
Revenge of the Sith. It's the space battle at the beginning. That's
Okay.
I like that a lot. The dialogue's cheesy and stuff. But
The dialogue's terrible.
I
man,
can't.
that movie.
I
couldn't
can't get
through
enough
it.
of ships burning up in the atmosphere. That just looks so cool.
Couldn't get, but yeah, I did watch.
But you scan through, and I'm just looking at the scenes that are popping up, and it's just people talking, people talking, people talking. Nothing goes on until almost 2/3 through the movie, when you get Obi-Wan Kenobi on going after.
Yeah, I watched.
Master, Grievous.
I watched the opening space battle. I watched the battle against General Grievous. I watched Samuel L. Jackson's fight scene, and I watched the.
Which is abomination, man. I can't. It's abominable. I can't stand that fight scene.
Oh, really?
He is the best Jedi. Practically, I don't know. It depends. A lot of people like Yoda, and he just falls over,
Oh,
just
yeah,
dead. I
yeah.
mean, it's a weak battle.
It's not great, but I mean, we're talking about a movie that's not great. So, but then I skipped all the way ahead to the end, and I watched that lightsaber fight. And I didn't go that far. I stopped it as soon as he cut off.
So you're talking about from my point of view, the Jedi are evil.
As soon as he cut off his legs at the end of that, spoiler alert, I guess, I turned it off. So yeah, the trailer did get me wanting some Star Wars.
Yeah, let's get back to the trailer. So what I'm excited about for the trailer is some really high-res spaceship battles. I love good spaceship battles.
I did notice, I don't know, we've never really talked about it, but J.J. Abrams is directing, obviously. Do you have a problem with his lens flares thing?
I did not in the first Star Trek. When he repeated it ad nauseum in the second Star Trek, I started to feel
Did you notice them in the Star Wars trailer?
There's a little bit.
Yeah, there is a little bit.
It didn't seem as much.
I don't mind it. It doesn't bother me
So
that much.
his reasoning for that is lens flares kind of make you feel like the scene is more real.
To me, it does, because it feels like the light is kind of reflecting a little bit.
Like the light's in your eyes, as
Yeah.
if you're in the room with these people. And I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
But there's a limit, and he really pushes that limit in the Star Wars movies, or Star Trek movies, excuse me. And the other thing I hope he doesn't do this again in Star Wars. These two reboots of Star Trek, everybody is just frantic. Everybody's running somewhere. There's always some emergency, and the pace of that movies goodness, my grammar. The pace of those movies is out of control. It's just too fast. And that's now here's
never bothered me.
Here's the problem, or here's the reason for that. The original Star Trek films, or
boring.
the previous,
They're boring.
that is a point of view someone could have. The previous set of Star Trek films were way more geared towards politics and science, and the action was sort of like dessert. And that was a good combination for a period of time. And I'm okay with that. Like I recognize we've moved on. Let's have a new director, a new person in control. It's the same thing with Star Wars. I just hope he doesn't do that with Star Wars, because Star Wars doesn't have that feel of that constant racing to the next thing. There's usually something to interrupt that.
Yeah.
Maybe with the exception of Attack of the Clones, was just kind of a really weird back and forth pace.
But I did really enjoy the trailer. It really got me excited, even more excited than I already was. And I know that I'm going into this movie with way too high expectations, but I can't help it.
Well, and that's another worry that I have, which is why I don't want to see the trailer of 50 bazillion times.
Oh, I've already watched it 5 or 6 times now. One thing I did notice that really got me excited, the music in that trailer is fantastic. It's awesome.
I listened to it. I don't remember the music specifically.
It's
I'll
awesome.
have to do it again.
It's very. They add in a bunch of the old music.
But they've-
it's all in there. And
But I imagine, if I remember right, they kind of added a modern flair to it.
a little bit, yeah.
Yeah. I like that in movies when the
Well,
next,
see, they
the
take
next
it-
film comes out and they kind of tweak the soundtrack and make it a little more exciting.
Well,
The Halo games, for example, did that every time.
I don't know what you're talking about. I don't play.
What is
video
this
games,
Halo
so.
thing you've mentioned?
So they had like a little modern feel to it, where they added some stuff, and then they kind of transition into the older one, which I think is cool.
Oh.
I actually listened to just the audio today, because I kept getting distracted by the stuff that was visually going on, because I'm a visual person. So I just listened to just the audio, and it was great. Just the music, actually. There was a specific video that just showed the music. But yeah, got me really excited.
How did you feel about Harrison Ford saying it's all true?
I think it was cool.
It's interesting
It's
because he makes, he hokey religions and in the first Star Wars movie. He doesn't like the Force.
Speaking of odd and interesting, what do you think about the exclusion of Luke Skywalker from the trailer? Do you think do you have any
I've heard
theories
all
about that?
sorts of.
Do you think it's just because they're waiting to show him in the movie, or you think that there's a reason behind it? I heard an interesting theory.
that he's the bad guy
that
or
he's
something?
evil. That he turned evil.
No. Well,
you
okay.
don't think so?
Here's
all
the
right,
thing.
All right. So wait, would that bother you if it was true?
No, because assuming that there's some fantastic reason for it.
Mm-hmm.
That's of any weird change in a treasured story or cherished story. Just explain it.
Yeah.
In a plausible way. You can't just say, "Fuck, wizards exist, and we're gonna magic Luke into being," that's way out left field.
Well,
But if he's corrupted, and we have a reasonable explanation for led by the hand into that storyline, and I'm okay with it.
Well, when I first heard that theory, and obviously this is all theory at this point. I mean, who knows what it actually is? But when I first heard that theory, I was like, "That's such a terrible idea. I would hate that." But then I thought about it. I was like, "Wait a minute. It would actually make sense." I mean, this guy
I don't think it makes any sense right now.
really. Well,
Why?
think about how troubled his life is. I mean, he was stuck on. He uses this
He
last.
overcomes the
he
bloody
has to-
emperor.
He has to kill his father.
He doesn't kill his father.
Well, he has a hand in it.
Where?
Who cuts his arm off?
Oh, okay. Okay, never mind. I'm thinking specifically of
So his whole family. His whole
when
family
he picks up. So Darth Vader picks up
Yeah, and kills the emperor.
the emperor and throws him over, and then he gets all lightninged, and that's what I was thinking of. The way that he would move into the dark side, just I don't know. I mean, if that sounds as inexcusable as the way Anakin moved to the dark
Well, I'm
side.
just
The way they
saying
portrayed that was so
He's-
dumb.
I mean, his whole family's dead. He didn't finish his training. I
Well,
think
that's sort of like reaching, climbing the mountain and then deciding 10 steps before you get to the top to just turn around. He's defeated the Dark Lord. His father was sort of redeemed at the last moment. Everything's good. I don't see how you could explain away the back. So anyway, the story I heard, and I say story I heard by meaning I read it once on the internet today, that
everything on the internet's true, though.
I
Right?
did hear that somewhere. I think I read that on the internet as well. That perhaps Luke bites the dust pretty early, and that's why maybe he's not in there. Now, here's the thing: in the what they call the expanded universe, I don't know if you ever read any expanded universe books. I don't imagine you've read Star Wars books at all.
I don't. Oh, I've actually
you?
read a couple back when I actually read books. Like in middle school and stuff.
Okay, so I've read quite a bit of them in 2 or 3 particular series. There's a series called The Young Jedi Knights where Luke ends up being a sort of the new Yoda. He starts the Jedi Order over again and starts training new Jedi. So that's
Well, all that stuff's no longer considered canon, though, right?
of course it's canon, but they've splintered the story. They're taking a left
Right.
turn. So I mean, there's canon, and then there's. I understood that when they first started doing this, J.J. Abrams sat down and they, everybody who was involved were making those decisions. What are we going to consider canon
Right.
for our storyline? That doesn't
Yeah.
that exclude.
Well, no. It makes it
everything
Star Wars,
else.
but it makes it kind of quasi canon. Like in terms of the storyline we're at right
Well, it's
now,
the
that
old and
stuff
new.
is not anymore.
Yeah,
But
I would call it old and new. I
There's
would call it
several
alteration.
books. I think there's like 20-some books / comic books / other things that have come out
that are in the same timeline.
that are in the timeline that we're talking. Those are what
Well,
are considered
the 3
canon.
that I know of are what they call the Timothy Zahn series, and that's this a guy named Timothy Zahn who wrote them in 7, 8, and 9 in the series, and it involves Grand Admiral Thrawn, who's one of the Grand Admirals of the Empire, who's left over because the whole Empire did dissolve the moment
Right.
the Emperor was destroyed. The ships are still there, the troops are still there. There's still a hierarchy anyway. So someone takes over, and this guy happens to be called Grand Admiral Thrawn, and there's a whole storyline behind that. When I first heard that they were doing this, I thought maybe they'd follow that tack, just because those books were, at least as far as I know, were fairly popular. But it sounds like they're going a completely different direction, which I'm fine with. Again, so long as it just makes sense. That's all I ask, is to make it make sense.
What I like about this trailer, just a few more thoughts on it before we actually get into our discussion here, is it didn't give away much, if anything, of the plot. I have no idea what this movie's about.
They did so good with that. A trailer should simply whet your appetite and be done. And so many movies, I think, they get spooked by the
Yeah.
idea that they're not going to get enough people to come. Maybe
Which you can-
they think their movie's too far out there and it's too
Which
weird.
you can
for the general
understand
public.
for something that doesn't have a base audience already. I mean,
Yeah, if a brand new series.
I hate it, but you can understand it to an extent. But this, I mean, everybody's going to see this movie anyway. Just whet people's appetite. Just show them some bits and pieces to get them excited and call
Well,
it a day,
that's
which is what they
actually,
did.
you make a good point. Everyone's going to see this movie. This movie's
Yeah.
going to break enormous box office records, I assume. As long as it gets good reviews.
It won't
I
even
mean-
matter.
I mean, anything. Well, but I mean, look
well,
at.
Phantom Menace got good reviews the day it came out. So,
Well, that's.
then
I
everybody-
don't remember what review. I was a little too young when that was coming out, but
well, I mean, I was too, but things I've heard since.
Okay.
Everybody was talking
Well,
about.
so I mean, there's the joke on the internet that like, remember how much everybody loved the Phantom Menace before everyone saw the Phantom Menace? Well, that's how much I love this other thing. I don't know if the consumer is going to be fooled into that twice. So I think everybody's going into this with a little bit more. Please God, J.J. Abrams, don't fuck this up. You know,
Yeah.
I think it'll be all right.
Yeah, I'm excited for it. December can't come fast enough. So
And I'll
I'm
probably
sure.
be one of those guys who sees it 7 times.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, and I'm sure we'll discuss it many times. I'm sure our podcast before that comes out, we'll discuss all the Star Wars
we
movies.
should.
So.
That would be fun.
But yeah, we're gonna take a completely 180 here and actually get into our.
Would zombies be the complete opposite of Star Wars?
I don't know.
Maybe it's only a 270, Jordan.
Or a 90. I mean, it depends on what direction we're going here. But so yeah, we're talking about zombie movies this week. We're doing continuing our countdown to Halloween.
Yep.
We got this week and next week of that. I didn't get to watch as many of these as I wanted to because we're recording a couple days early because we got some things going on the rest of the week, or at least I do. So there's a few more I wanted to watch that I didn't get to, but I think that we've got enough to have a solid discussion. We watched a couple today.
Yeah. So what do you got to kick us off?
Well, I thought I'd kick us off by talking about we watched the Dawn of the Dead remake today together as kind of preparation, and I thought it was a good starting point for us because I thought that they had a lot of the good things and the bad things about the zombie genre in one.
This movie was full of tropes, both good and bad, about zombie movies. Right off the bat, they start with this. The introduction of the virus. How do people get infected? And that thankfully that didn't last too long.
Because I feel like
We had the little girl standing in the doorway.
Oh, okay.
That was the first thing.
Well, yeah, but they didn't explain how people actually got the virus itself.
They didn't.
As far as I
Okay,
know.
that's fair. They didn't introduce, patient 0 or whatever.
Right.
But they did show, and I think that's obligatory for some kinds of zombie movies, that you need to have a little bit of an origin story about what's happening. Unless I don't know. I think it would be fun to see a zombie movie that jumps into the story halfway through, where the virus has already existed, for example.
The Walking Dead, too. I mean, this is a movie podcast, but I mean, go back, because The Walking Dead is one of the greatest zombie things ever made as a TV show.
You think so? One of the greatest?
Oh, yeah. I mean, for the first few seasons, it is.
Maybe. There's a lot to be said about that series.
Well, yeah, but, I mean, that's besides the point. The point is the main character, Rick, wakes up in the hospital after everything's gone down.
Okay, fair enough. Isn't the guy the little interaction he's having with his buddy, the guy the car they stop at the very beginning of the series, isn't that guy kooky with some zombie?
Man, it's been so long since I've seen the first season.
All right.
I haven't seen the first season since
the
it
point
came
you
out.
make is that he wakes up and
right, and
stuff's
everything's
falling apart.
already.
But you do get a lead into that. Things are normal before that. I think it'd be interesting to jump in with the audience already knowing this is a zombie movie. We don't have to explain what zombies are.
See, I like the idea of explaining how everything got started a little bit more, just because it helps me connect to it a little bit more. It adds kind of a sense of story.
Well, it gives you that story's specific background.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't adopt a general background. It gives you, in this story, this is how it went down.
Well, that's my problem, and it's one of the things I have to talk about actually is it's so different in every zombie movie how these things start and what exactly occurs to make people zombies, that it gets confusing, and that's why I like it explained to me in every movie, because
you want to know this particular
I want to know
author or
what's
director's
going
idea.
on in this movie, because it can be so different movie to movie that helps me out a little bit.
Well, so in Dawn of the Dead, it starts off, you get to know a handful of characters very briefly, and then you've got this, I guess, are they married in the story? I thought she was, our main character girl this was like her.
I think she's married. I think they're married.
Okay, well, we'll stipulate that she's married.
I mean, I kept
so
calling
she's
him
in bed with her
zombie
husband,
so.
and the father wakes up, little girl knocks on the door or whatever, and he goes to tend to her, and it turns out she's all zombified, and she attacks him, and the husband gets it, lady bails. Anyway, so you have that origin story, and then you have the obligatory everybody gets together at some public place, and then there's one group of people that are pissed off, and you had something to say about that.
I did. So they all get together. It's a cop that's kind of with the main girl. I think her name was Anna or something like that. Yeah, that's
She's
not
just
important.
a generic blonde
Yeah,
female.
that's the blonde chick, because I think we kept referring to her as. In fact,
There comes a
point where more people show up to where they end up being, and there ends up being two blonde chicks.
She's
and I
so
thought that
forgettable.
I thought that they were the same girl for most of the movie.
Yeah. She's not memorable
I
at
just
all.
thought that she curled her hair at one point and it was the same person. But anyway, so she gets together with this cop, played by Ving Rhames, who's the best part of the movie. And they meet up with these three other people. And they all hole up in the shopping mall of the town or the city or wherever they are.
Yeah, which was full of product placement.
Yeah, well, you have more of a problem with that than I do. I don't care.
Well, it just seemed like, they're shoving it down your throat. And I realize that's probably how they paid for a great majority of the movie. But anyway, go on.
So this,
I'll limit my complaints to that.
So basically, here we go with my main complaints of the movie. Is they get in the elevator in this shopping mall and they go, and the elevator doors open. There's these three mall security guards who, right from the bat, are jerks, and we don't understand why.
Yeah, the movie doesn't earn that.
It doesn't earn it at all. It doesn't make sense why, and I think
they're just pissed off.
That's a problem in this genre in general. Is you see it a lot. Is you just get these random people who are angry for, I guess, because the world is ending. But
it's almost as if if everybody was cooperative and like, oh, let me help you out, the movie would have, even though there's The Walking Dead literally in the story, the movie wouldn't have very much drama, so they have to do it in the human stories.
But it feels so forced.
It does.
So forced.
Oh, yeah.
Like, and it goes on forever.
They just randomly lock them up like, oh, we don't want you to steal. The apocalypse is happening, but, we don't want you to, like, use anything in the mall.
Yeah, well, and then
immediately after that, they're doing it, just within a few short days.
Eventually, about 45 minutes later into the movie, again, without earning it at all, the main jerk security guard suddenly is the good guy.
Yeah,
and it's this complete switch, and you never really get a transition to that happening.
The movie takes a hard left in the middle and suddenly becomes, you get like 3 minutes of comedy.
Oh yeah, it was,
the tone shifts really. It's a hard.
I mentioned it when we were watching it. It was like this human character had gotten bit, but he hadn't actually turned to a zombie yet. So all the humans have to decide whether to kill him. They choose to kill him. And then the screen fades to black, and we come back up, and it's a complete. The music changes. It's a completely different tone.
Like a really upbeat version of "Down with the Sickness" by Disturbed, and they're just basically like chilling out. They're stuck in this mall. They can't go anywhere, so they're an island unto themselves. They're playing golf off the roof and trying to hit zombies with it. And
they got
riding bikes down the hallways of the mall.
They got a buddy who's stuck on the roof of the gun store, and they're sending messages back and forth. They've got
their whiteboards.
Yeah, they're looking at the zombies and coming up with like celebrity nicknames for them and sending them across to the guy who's got a sniper rifle and he's taking them out. It's actually a lot of fun, and that was one of my favorite parts of the movie.
I'll be honest with you, I loved that. That almost felt like. That could have been a short.
That's what a group of guys would do in a zombie apocalypse.
Totally.
We'd get up on the roof and we'd shoot at zombies.
You can't leave. You've got plenty of food.
We drink beer and sit in lawn chairs and just pop shots at zombies. Exactly. I mean, that's what guys would do. So I was able to relate to that.
But it is so out of context with the rest of the movie, and then that's over very quickly.
It's over too quickly. Well, I don't think it's out of context with the rest of the movie because the last hour
shift.
The last hour is similar to that. But the first hour is completely different.
If to divide this movie up into two halves, the second half is much better than the first half.
Oh, yeah, I enjoyed the second half.
But the second half still has this, it starts with this tone shift to this kind of, what do we do for 2 months while we're locked up in this mall? Well, we're going to shoot guys and play golf off the roof. And then there's this kind of valley in between where they're deciding about a couple things about what they're going to do. And then you have the final action sequence where stuff happens, and there's a couple arbitrary things that just sort of exist just to get them out of the mall.
I think a huge dip in the second half of the movie is when the woman is pregnant and she's giving birth.
Oh, what a random story!
It was
pointless.
I think that fit better in the tone of the first half, but they threw it into this completely different tone of the second half. So it was like, what is this even in here for?
Yeah. So for folks who don't know, the girl, there's a girl in the story who's just the random, girlfriend number one of one of the characters.
And she's arbitrarily Russian.
She's pregnant, and this movie's very diverse.
And she's impregnated by a black guy. So
it's okay, whatever. But he's so concerned about the baby. Well, anyway, partway through the beginning of the film, she disappears, and you don't really see her. Well, it turns out she's been, I don't know how she got sick, but she's slowly zombifying, and she's about to have this baby, and the baby ends up being born, and it's this zombie hybrid thing. It's really weird, and it feels so out of context, and it just ends. The baby gets shot or stomped or whatever the hell they do to it, and everybody involved in that storyline dies, and it just seemed like it didn't even matter.
It's kind of
because it doesn't have any bearing on the end of the story.
It reminds me a little bit of how in every romantic comedy ever, there's someone that the main, usually woman, is attached to, gets sick or dies, and it's really sad, and then all of a sudden nobody cares about it anymore, and 5 minutes later we're back to the romance and the comedy.
Yeah.
That's what this reminded me of. This was in here, and it's really dark because they have to kill a baby that's a zombie in it, and then all of a sudden it's over and we never discuss it again.
Yeah, I didn't like that at all. And there's a couple other moments where you're supposed to feel emotional about something.
But
I mean,
we
just
don't
given
care.
the tone of the music and everything. But again, it's the same thing we go back to. The movie didn't earn it. Where there's this new group of people that shows up at the mall, and right away they find out one of the guys has been bitten and he's going to die, and the music's all sad, and then they pop this guy, and there's this long pause. Everybody's like mourning, and you just don't care as the viewer.
Actually, a ton of moments in this movie like that, where
that's one of the most memorable.
They try and build this attachment to the characters, but they don't do enough at the beginning of the movie for you to care at all.
And then there's this stupid plot line with the dumb dog.
Oh,
that gets
God,
so this
brutal
dog. They find this dog in the bowels of the mall somewhere.
It doesn't get eaten by zombies for reasons that aren't explained at all.
Yeah, so because they say at the beginning, they say explicitly, there's some exposition coming through the television that says they seem to be going after warm live bodies.
Oh, did they say that?
Yeah,
I missed that.
And what the heck is a dog other than a warm live body zigzagging?
You can't tell me
them?
that these hungry zombies, these hungry cannibal zombies, don't care about this dog just roaming.
And this gets to the heart of what is the zombie in your story. You have to set. I think you have to set up clear rules about what happens, because if you break those rules at the end, then your movie doesn't earn my appreciation. So if the zombie is this mindless object that is just all it wants to do is consume food, putting aside the problems of like the heart isn't beating, so there's no blood circulation, which means there'd be no oxygen to the muscles, and the muscles wouldn't even freaking work. Put that aside. Okay, I'll buy that. That's the MacGuffin or whatever. That's the magic bean.
That's all zombie movies ever.
Right. That's the magic bean about zombie
that.
movies. I will accept that. But then, if they can hear you and they come after you, and maybe they can smell you and come after you, or whatever, they see you and come after you.
How they know the
but they
difference
then ignore the dog.
Yeah, how do they know the difference at that point?
Exactly, and that's the problem that I found with this particular movie. Because the dog ends up being a plot point because it gets them out of the mall. Because they go chase one girl who cares about the dumb dog, goes and chases it. They got to go save her. People die, and now they're just like, well, screw it. We're gonna make or break, because they have this plan to go to an island and get away from it.
Doesn't work out too well for them in the end, but.
And that. Well, I don't want to. Do you have anything else to say about the middle of the movie? Because I don't want to.
I'm just gonna repeat kind of the point where we're talking about these character moments that we just don't care about. What I think, we'll talk about it a little bit more later on, is kind of a feature of these zombie movies. I think part of the problem is the audience, and we know going in that we're going to a zombie movies. We want to see people fight zombies. We want to see zombies get shot. We want to see blood and guts. That's what we want to see in a zombie movie. And these movies try and add these plot points in. And most of the time they don't earn them. They don't do a good job, so they don't care at all. I think a movie that does it well is 28 Days Later. They have some good character moments in there that the movie actually earns. You actually care a little bit, and that makes the movie more effective. A movie like this didn't care at all. I just wanted to get back to the zombie fighting because that's
immediately as soon as they all hold up in the mall. Like, I understand, like, you're getting in a zombie movie, or even in real life, if there were zombies coming, I would go find a safe place that had lots of food and stuff for me. Fine. But then kick back to the cool stuff. Like, you don't come to a zombie movie to sit and watch drama happen on screen. You come to watch people get ripped apart whatever else.
Do more of the, shoot Rosie O'Donnell over there. Like, I want more of that because that was more fun.
It was more fun. It was funny. And that gets us to the end of the movie.
Because that's kind of,
is my favorite part of this.
Well, one more thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
That comedic tone is not exactly what I wanted through the whole movie. But I kind of expected once they got holed up in this mall, like they were going to go up to the roof and they were going to use machine guns and they were going to try and take some of these zombies out. I thought that was going to be the whole movie. That's not. Like, the zombies are only in, if the movie's 2 hours, it might be in 30 minutes of the movie.
Yeah.
There's not enough zombies for a zombie movie.
I agree.
But anyway, you can get it. You like the part at the end. You can get into that.
Yeah, well, so leading up to that, so when they finally exit them, they've taken two of the mall like shuttle buses and they've turned them into zombie tanks, and they're covered with razor wire and like shielding, and they've removed all the windows so they can shoot out through the zombies. And one of the cool things I liked is they've made these slits through the walls of these shuttle buses that are the right size for a chainsaw to go through, and that they're the right height.
I liked that idea until they turned it into the guy slipped with the chainsaw and killed like 3 people. That I was like, come on,
no, that was a really bad idea. They're trying to move the plot along, like how do we reduce? We've got too many people.
Yeah,
we can't have this many people survive. We have to have half of them dead before the end of the movie. It's almost like they're fulfilling a quota. So they leave with 2 of these shuttle buses, and they're driving through, and then you have the problem. One of the guys who came through halfway through the movie is trying to saw somebody through the side of the bus, and he ends up killing half the bus, and then people freak out and they crash and they gotta save. Anyway, they finally get away, and meanwhile they're doing some really fun stuff. When they first leave the mall and they drive out into the crowd of people, and you realize like how, for whatever reason, the zombies are massing at the mall, just for the movie's own reasons. So
that aren't explained, but
yeah, well, they touch on it very briefly by saying, "Why are they all here?" Well, maybe it's what they know, because they kind of go off this.
That was not.
It was almost philosophy. Yeah,
it was not a good explanation at all.
I feel like they're just trying to. They do back it up later, with the guy who's their friend who owns the gun shop that they've been messaging with the whiteboard. When he gets zombified at the end, he smears blood on the whiteboard and keeps holding it up. And this idea as if, maybe the last thing they did is still fresh somehow in their minds. I kind of like that. At least they backed it up. But again,
the movie doesn't earn it. The movie doesn't explain it enough to earn it.
It doesn't. Yeah, it just feels like like when you're watching some detective show, and like as they get closer to the end, they just kind of throw facts at you, and they're taking left turns all the time. You don't understand what's going on. It was sort of like just a quick fact, and you just didn't really earn it. But when they finally leave the mall, they're plowing through all these people, and they gun it out into this crowd, and they get bogged down in the sheer number of bodies in the way. Yeah. That was cool. I really liked that. And then
the way they get out of it isn't that cool, because it's like
it could be or couldn't be.
If that was going to cause that big of a shockwave, more would have happened to those vehicles.
Yeah. So what they do is they shove wedge a flare into the top of a propane tank and throw it out, and then shoot it, and it sparks or whatever, and it creates a bomb. That's cool.
It knocks out all the zombies, but has no effect on any of the humans at all.
In like a 300-yard radius.
You literally see the fire engulf the guy that was on the roof, and the next scene, nothing is wrong with him.
Yeah, that was a little poorly done. I like the idea of them using the sort of homemade propane bombs, but if they'd made the use of that a little more realistic, that would have been fine. At any rate, the best part of this is when they get to the end, they get on the boat, and that's sort of they pull away from the dock. One of the guys is been bitten, and he sacrifices himself or whatever. You get kind of that obligatory moment. But then the movie kind of just ends, and the credits roll. And you're sort of like, oh, well, okay, that was the end. No, this was the coup d'etat. This was the best part of this.
French.
Is that French?
I don't know.
I guess it is French.
Sounds like French.
Just the best part is kind of what I was thinking. They find one of the characters that you kind of enters and exits the movie pretty quick. And he mentions this idea of getting to the boat because he owns a boat. So that's whose boat they're on. They find his old movie camera. And you see, found footage style, these little like 20-second, 30-second clips, maybe not even that long, like 10-second clips of stuff that's going on in the boat. And it's fine, it's hunky-dory, they're kind of enjoying themselves. And then you get little shots of like, well, they see a boat just drifting in the water, and they go over to it. It's like a rowboat, and it turns out that there's, in a cooler, there's like a head, and zombie head in the cooler for no reason, and that's kind of ominous. And then like running out of fuel, and you get these little glimpses of all the stuff happening, and it's just so fun. I loved it, and they just slowly are descending into more and more dire circumstances until they finally arrive at this fabled island. They pull up to the dock, and guess what's waiting for them is this massive horde of zombies, and they're screwed. And the last shot of the movie is the camera being dropped on the dock, and the swarm of feet, and then that's it. Oh, I loved it. It put a bow on this movie in such a way, like it changed my opinion of it. I would have given it like a low 1 or 2 until I saw that, and I was like, okay, that pulls it up to a 3 for me. I really liked that.
if I had to rate the movie, I mean, we're not really technically reviewing this, but if I had to rate it, I don't think I could get it to a 3 overall because it had so much bad in it that I didn't care about. It was entertaining enough. I'd give it probably 2 3/4, like almost to a 3. Because 3 is when I rate movies. My cutoff 3 is good. If I was gonna say a movie is good, I would give it a 3.
So two something and under is bad for you.
Two.
Sometimes that's the problem with the 5-point scale.
But
There's no middle ground.
Well, between
right?
2.5 and 3 is movies that are almost there, but there's like a little
Yeah.
like bad things in it. Is I can't quite get it there. So that's another movie like this. I'd probably give it 2 3/4. Just, but I mean, that's what that part did make me think about. Is I can't think of a single zombie movie that's a found footage movie, which seems odd.
Huh. I don't know zombie movies well enough to know that.
I mean,
I'm going to look into that. That's
we've-
an interesting idea.
We've talked about it a little bit before. How I don't like found footage
Yeah,
movies.
neither
and
do I.
We'll talk about it a little bit more next week when we do classic or modern horror movies because it's all over the place in those.
Yeah.
But I feel like this would be a genre where you would have a lot of that. And I mean, there might be a couple out there.
Well, if there's not any, then it's ripe for it. Goodness.
Yeah, and I mean,
That's a genre that hasn't been touched by the found footage idea. That means you can kind of set fresh new standards. I loved the way they did this. If the movie had little bits of found footage mixed, and this is what I hate about found footage movies, is you have to come up with some contrived reason to have the camera on.
oh, it's so annoying.
Right.
And then even
so
when stuff starts to happen, even if you have this contrived reason, you shouldn't still be filming at that point.
right,
Which is my problem.
and I want to be able to buy this camera because it has the best battery life ever. You know, it goes on for days and days. The Cloverfield camera is probably the best camera ever made. But
Well, that's a found footage movie I actually enjoy, believe it or not. So,
oh, really?
Yeah.
It's the first one I ever saw.
It's probably the first one I ever
maybe,
saw too.
I don't know.
I might have
Blair
seen it
Witch.
after.
I was a little too young for Blair Witch when it came out.
You know, see, I saw that recently. I think Paranormal Activity might have been the first that I saw.
Well, and even Paranormal they take the typical found footage shaky camera out of it enough. They have these static cameras sitting around, and it feels a little more.
That's true.
Like normal.
Cloverfield is all somebody.
Yeah,
going to
and
camera.
it's in it. Boy, I saw that in 3D, and it made me so sick.
Well, at least in Cloverfield, what it does well for the found footage is when there's something happening and people are running, they aren't still holding the camera at what's happening. You actually see the guy running with the camera.
Yeah,
which is
he
why
drops down to his side.
Which is why a lot of people don't like it, but I think that adds a little bit more realism to the found footage element of it.
Well, at any rate, the way that they do this at the end of Dawn of the Dead is really, really well done. And if I could clip out the worst parts of this movie and even just clip them out because the movie was kind of long, I'd rate this fairly highly. But again, that's using zombie standards because I'm not a big zombie fan.
But would you like to say if they say you clipped out all the crappy parts of the movie? And you threw in parts where somebody found the video camera and they were kind of filming what was going on and filming the zombies and stuff like that. They were kind of filming what was going on the roof.
I don't know. It could. I think there's potential there.
Yeah, so I think that's the best way to do found footage is when you kind of have that in there, but it's not the whole movie.
Well, it sounds to. I think we could have done. The type of people to take this task on would be. The group that made, I forget the director's name, but whoever made Shaun of the Dead. Because that has the right tone to be both serious and funny with mixing of a new theme. I don't know. You've seen Shaun of the Dead.
I've seen bits and pieces of it.
Oh, really?
I don't like
it.
it.
Okay, it's fantastic. And you don't like it?
Not very much, no.
Oh, dude, we gotta change that opinion.
But this is a good segue what I want to talk about next, and that's one thing I like about zombie movies is you can do a lot with them, and by that I mean the tones of the movies that you have in zombie movies is very diverse, because you've got especially like the older classic movies, you know, the original Night of the Living Dead and the original Dawn of the Dead movie, all those movies like the George Romero movies back in the 60s and 70s. They've all kind of got this sense of dread to them. They're kind of very Halloween-y, for lack of a better word. Then you've also got ones that are more centered on horror, kind of horror action, and by those, I mean, the ones that come to mind are like 28 Days Later, 28 Weeks Later, stuff like that. Then you've got more comedic movies, like Zombieland, which I watched today, Shaun of the Dead, which you just mentioned. Then you got these ones that kind of fall somewhere in the middle of all three of those. And Dawn of the Dead remake, like we've been talking about for the past 30 minutes. I Am Legend kind of falls into that category.
I'm Legend that's a much better film, I think,
Yeah.
compared to any of these that we're talking about.
World War Z is another one I think kind of falls in the middle. And you could even go as far as saying they're not very good, at least in my opinion, but the Resident Evil movies fall into that kind of middle category.
So I don't know anything about the story really. Why are they actual zombies?
I
in
think
that story,
I
or they're
think
just
so. I don't
the
remember
dead come back to life? Because I feel like there's a subtle distinction.
I think that they're. I mean, I've only seen the first one. It's been a while. I don't know enough about them to talk about it like I'm an expert for sure. But I just figured I'd throw them on there because when I looked up zombie movies, they were on the list.
I mean,
so.
I think they definitely qualify. But there's sort of maybe I'm just nitpicking, but there's sort of classic zombie films, and then there's Living Dead films.
Right.
And I think there's a line there of some kind.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I don't know enough about them to actually give a total opinion. But just my main point is there's a lot of different things you do with these movies, which I like that element of.
It's a pretty broad.
Mm.
It's like it's broad within its specific category.
Yeah, I mean,
and I noticed the difference between the early zombie films and newer zombie films. In the older zombie films, there's this. The Living Dead is much more attached to classic evil. And the thing
they're much more attached to actual people rising from the dead.
Yeah,
rather than
the
there
classic
being like
coming
a
up
virus.
out of the graveyard kind of zombie.
Like not like from the virus, which is what all the new ones are. They're actual people, just for whatever reason, coming back from the dead.
Yeah, and I think that maybe that represents a cultural shift in what we think about most and what we're afraid of. Because being afraid of a virus is a very modern thing. Being afraid of
because
corpse
we're
climbing
so
out
connected now that
Yeah.
if a virus like that actually broke out, I mean,
it would spread very quickly.
As many flights as we take, as much as we're around other people, I mean, back in the days where even the 60s and 70s, I mean, you had air travel and stuff like that, but it was not nearly as prevalent people traveling as it is now. So that's why I think I see your cultural shift. I think that makes a lot of sense just because of the things that have changed.
Yeah, it's something we could be afraid of now versus, I don't know, I didn't live in the 60s or 70s, so I can't really speak to this, but I would imagine...
You're not that old? It's kind of surprising, actually.
Let me pull that pacifier out of your mouth. So the earlier films, maybe you were afraid of... The graveyard would be a much more present threat to you because, there's no internet. There's you barely got color television. So, I don't know. I'll have to ask my parents about that.
But, I mean, going on the same point, a lot of those older movies, they take use of the slow kind of walking along kind of zombies
versus the streaking terrors that
now
come up in
a lot
movies.
of them, and I didn't realize it because I guess I hadn't seen any, but I've seen more within the last couple of years. I always thought of the slow walking zombies as that's what most of them were, and the faster zombies were like an every now and then kind of thing. But it seems like it's actually the other way around. Like most of the movies made now are the fast zombies that run and chase you.
What's popular now?
Yeah, I mean it makes it a little bit more entertaining, I think, in terms of what you can do.
Well, and I think in general, American film goers prefer quick shots, quick action. So, like, if you go to sit through a drama, that's a different crowd, really. Longer takes, 6 seconds or more. American films, if something, and especially an action film, if the camera lingers on any one thing for more than about 3 seconds, it feels like it's dragging. And that's just, I think there's just been this acceleration of the way films are produced.
I think it depends on kind of the movie and the genre for that, because there's a lot of film...
Yeah, zombies, I think, generally fall into either action or...
that's true. I mean, but in terms of just saying, like, the average moviegoer kind of thing, I think it just depends on the movie that you're seeing, but definitely in the zombie genre... definitely in the zombie genre, I can see that, where, I mean, you want zombie action. That's why you're there to see it. So you don't want... You
want the blood. You want the viscera and arms and limbs.
You want the strings of flesh coming off that you hate.
Ugh, that's so bad. It's so gross.
But yeah, I mean, even going off of differences in zombie movies, you get things like how they all have different levels of smartness, like what they can do, and even some movies kind of mess that up, like you were talking about earlier with Dawn of the Dead, how it sets itself up one way and then kind of does other things. And I think a lot of zombie movies do that with the smartness. Like
they pick and choose to further the plot.
At one point, they'll just be run along and they just look for him, and then at another point they're climbing fences and opening doors, and it's like you never explained how they could do that because this whole time they've just been running into things.
I think the idea of the zombie as having sort of its needs are so basic that and its sense of fear is gone. There's nothing there, so it's just it's throwing itself at the door and trying to get its way through the door, completely uncaring about its physical well-being. So as it's tearing its way through your wooden door, it's losing chunks of flesh and it doesn't care. That zombie makes more sense to me than the one
that's the one that I
picking
like.
and choosing.
Yeah. And this one did a lot of it. Like, all of a sudden, zombies were climbing fences. Or the one that we talked about the most, Dawn of the Dead, is because, I mean, we're talking about that the most because we watched it today.
Yeah, we watched it today.
But
And I think it's pretty representative.
They start
of modern
climbing
films.
fences.
Oh, and then the one that's hanging off the truck for some reason.
Well, the one
Like,
that...
how did it just decide it was going to climb the truck? Because the rest of them couldn't do
The
that.
stereotypical jump scare zombie that comes out when they first meet the dog that comes off the roof like it was climbing on the roof coming to get them.
Oh, yeah.
Well, why was it up there? How did it know to get up there? Why wasn't it just walking like all the other ones?
I'll be honest. I don't like... for all the reasons that you just stated, I don't like that scene. But I also would counter that I like the scene because it was different. So it's this legless zombie that was sort of monkeying around on the pipes and stuff on the roof.
But
of
see,
this
you
garage.
gotta explain
kinda
why they
fun.
could do that.
And why they didn't hear it and da-da-da-da-da.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think that's just an interesting kind of thing with zombie movies is so different from movie to movie, which is why, like we talked about at the beginning, I needed to kind of set what's happened, what these things do, so that I know what I'm getting into.
What are the rules of the movie you're about to watch?
And also another thing is, how do people transform into these zombies? Like, as soon as they get bit, like in World War Z, as soon as they get bit, they transform into zombies. In other movies, it's if they get bit and then die, then they transform. I need to know where I'm getting into here because all of them are so different.
Between those two, which do you prefer? Which do you think? Which do you prefer to watch? A movie where the bite is it, or the movie where it's... See, I think the difference is the bite feels a little more mystical, magical, because it's instantaneous, and the sort of slow creeping virus style is more trying to go for a more realistic point of view.
I think it depends on what the movie's going for, and I'll explain what I mean. So if you've got a movie where it actually does a good job of developing the characters, you actually get to care about people, they have some good elements in it like that, I think that the bite, but waiting after the bite before you turn into a zombie is a better element because you're like, crap, I really cared about this character. Now I know what's going to end up happening.
Okay.
So when you earn that, I think that's the best way to do it. If you want to be a straight zombie action movie where people are just getting shot, I think it's much better when they just get bit and turn into zombies because it's like, yes, now we get to keep going. So I definitely think it depends on what the movie is going for. And obviously there are plenty of movies that miss and try and do one or the other, but they're actually going for the other type of thing.
They do both at the same time.
Yeah.
I think
that doesn't work at all for me.
A movie that did this fairly well without dragging it out, I think, was World War Z. When stuff's going down in the beginning and they're first realizing that there's some crisis, the Brad Pitt's character, they pause for a second and or something's going on anyway. He has a moment to watch this guy who just got bit. He saw a guy get bit, and then he watches him, and basically it's an 8 count.
He counts it. He counts the seconds. So that comes in later in the film because he starts...
Something happens to him, and he thinks, "Oh crap! It's got in my mouth. I'm about to go."
So he goes and stands on the roof.
But there was no exposition. It was all done through. I mean, it's a movie. You want to see. Show don't tell. I think is really what you should focus on in a film. And they showed you. They didn't tell you.
Which is
that
great.
Was great
Because most of the time exposition feels forced and it's just there for the movie. But something like that.
What we call the as you know moment.
Yeah.
We both doctors know this thing, and we're going to talk about it like we didn't learn it in our first year of medical school.
Yeah.
That's annoying and sometimes it has to happen. If you're in a fantasy movie, a sci-fi movie, you have to explain these things to the viewer.
But especially in movies like this, it makes you feel like an idiot. Like, it makes you feel like they're treating you like an idiot.
Yeah.
But when you do it well like that, it's like, oh, that was awesome.
And if you have
he goes and stands on the roof because he knows he has to sacrifice himself to save his family.
Exactly.
If he has a freak out attack, he knows if he stands on the edge, he's gonna fall and his family will be safe. That's an awesome scene in that movie. I think that's one that really earns that.
I enjoyed that
moment.
Quite a bit.
Are there any other kind of zombie movie tropes? Because I know you were bringing up a bunch while we were.
Oh gosh, I should have written them down. I think we've covered most of them. If I think of another one,
Well, I mean, let's just
what
go
are
on.
some that you came up with?
Just I mean, those are the ones we talked about so far. Are really the ones that I thought of mostly.
So we covered. We talked about the type of zombie. We talked about how you get infected. I think the only other real problem I have with zombie movies and the trope that gets
I know
is
one.
the characters. It's just the way the
They're
characters.
boring.
Well, yeah, they
they're
fall so nicely into these pre-programmed roles. You've got the smart guy, you've got the innocent girl, you've got someone who's got some
You always know
tough guy talent. You've got the guy who's a bit of a dick but ends up in the end of the story having a talent that you need, like the guy in this movie.
You always know which
And
ones.
then you have all the arbitrary characters that get to be.
You always know which
chopped.
ones are going to die. That's. I mean, that.
Oh, and from the beginning, you and I were like, "It's gonna be so and so."
Yeah. Oh, that guy's definitely gonna.
Yeah.
Well, there's a scene in the movie where the guy.
One guy doesn't have a gun.
He gives them. He gives the two people have guns, and the one guy. He gives one guy an axe, and the other guy's carrying around a light. I was like, that guy's dead for sure.
Yeah.
He's the only one that doesn't have a weapon.
2 minutes later, he's toast.
done. Oh yeah, and it happened. But I mean, I think that's.
Which is kind of fun. I'll be honest with you. In a movie where you're going into knowing that sort of thing, it's kind of fun to play who's going to die.
It is kind of fun, but I think that's the thing with most.
You can almost turn into a drinking game.
Not that would be kind of fun, but I think that's not just a problem with the zombie genre. I think that's a horror kind of trope in general.
It is. But zombie movies are one of the worst. Are like they have the most sins.
Zombie and slasher movies are definitely the top two kind of.
Yeah.
All right, I know this person's gonna die. Like, who's gonna die first? Is it this one? This one, you can kind of figure it out the whole time. Zombie movies are another one where
I was surprised. It was in almost every movie. It's the black guy dies first, and in this case, it was a couple of white guys and stuff like that. It was not the black guy.
And another one, the zombie movies, similar to slasher movies. I mean, it's kind of a lot of similarities, more than I realized. But it's another one where you're yelling at the TV, don't do that.
We were yelling at this movie the whole time, or at least I was. I think you were quite annoyed with me at some points.
Oh, no, because I probably was doing it too. But or don't open the door. What are you doing? Just leave
that's
it
one
alone.
of my favorite things to do.
Don't go get the dog. Just stay in the
bloody mall. Yeah. All right.
But yeah, so there's stuff like that always happens, and those are some things that we were picking fun of while we were watching this movie.
I'll be honest with you, I had a lot of fun watching this. I think this is more fun watching with someone. If watching by myself, I would have been distracted.
I mean, most movies are like that though, especially when you have a genre like this where it's, it's just good fun. You just make fun of stuff. And
the whole time we just were picking stuff apart. And
this is a movie that's much more fun to watch at home than it would be like a movie theater when you
this
can't
would have
talk.
been awful in the movie
Because you can't make. I mean, you can, but it's not very polite. So, but. I mean, just kind of to wrap things up a little bit, like, what are your, favorites from the genre, your least favorite kind of things? I know you haven't seen so many of them, but I'm sure you've seen enough to give best and worst kind of.
So there's sort of, favorite zombie movies. Haven't seen a bunch, but Zombieland was really fun.
See, I watched that today on your recommendation. I liked it more than I thought I would.
Yeah.
The first 20 minutes, I was like, oh my god, I'm going to hate this movie so much, Greg. I can't believe Greg got me into it. But I kept it going because it's only an hour and a half long, so I figured I could make it through. And it's fun. I mean, it's a completely different tone than the other ones.
Okay, so Jesse Eisenberg's character is simultaneously charming and incredibly annoying.
Yeah.
He's got this nerdy...
much more annoying than charming, though, I think.
He's got this nerdy kind of goofiness about him. He's really... got this sweet image of what he wants his future girl to be like, and that's a large part of the movie is him trying to work out his relationship problems. Meanwhile, the world has fallen to crap. But he's got these rules about how he deals with zombies, and they come up in a really funny way.
Yeah, those are fun.
Check the back seat. Always leave your door out. But he's got numbers to them, and you just feel like this is a guy who writes things down in a notebook and carries that notebook with him everywhere. He just comes off as very nerdy, which is fun.
It's got my least favorite thing ever in movies when a romance feels really forced, but it does it in a way that's making fun of that.
Yes,
I think
it's very self-aware.
Yeah,
I
so
like that.
it's a fun movie.
And they killed Bill Murray. I mean, that was great. That was so funny.
There's a couple times where the movie slows down a little bit. Like after they kill Bill Murray, there's a 10-minute segment, 15-minute segment where it's like, all right,
they're just hanging out in the house.
Yeah, let's get back to going here. But it's a fun enough movie. I mean, I wouldn't call it my favorite, but I enjoyed it for what it was. I enjoyed it much more than I thought I would.
The reason why I bring it up is that it has a surprisingly touching moment in the middle of the movie, and it's when you find out, spoilers if you haven't seen it yet, there's a moment where Woody Harrelson's character has been talking about his dog the whole time.
And it's actually his kid.
And it turns out that this story is referencing his kid, and he just wasn't emotionally ready to handle that. I mean, that got me in the movie theater, man. It was like, whoa. And it didn't destroy the movie, because usually, like, when a movie takes a tone shift, like we're talking about today, like, it disrupts your feelings. And for me, all it did was make these characters more endearing.
See, he was my favorite character. He was the most fun.
Yeah.
And
his whole quest
I don't know if it's because
for a bloody Twinkie through that whole movie is just so funny.
I don't know if it's because I relate to the redneck a little bit more, being from the south of New England, but it's funny. He paints the number 3 for Dale Earnhardt on the side of all of his cars, and he finds like when they get the yellow Hummer and he finds the sack of guns. He's like, thank God for rednecks. They just shoot the guns off. I was like, oh my God, that's my favorite character.
He was great. He was great. Anyway, so that's what I like about the movie. Probably Shaun of the Dead though ranks top, just because that movie is start to finish. It's tight. There's no wasted moments in that movie. There's no fat on that.
I'll watch that with you sometime, because I know that I've tried to watch it a couple times in bits and pieces, and I just
it is a different kind of humor. It pulls very heavily from a British sensibility.
Yeah. Well, so obviously you prefer more the comedic kind of zombie movies than
I would say so, given so far, but just because when it gets serious, it often means that the movie is like I feel tense the whole time. It's not enjoyable. I feel like I almost feel like it's some sort of homework assignment to watch a film. So I want to be entertained, and the best movies mix humor in them, no matter what the genre is.
I like, if we're going to talk about my favorites, I like 28 Days and 28 Weeks.
I didn't like. I think I saw 28. What's the one where the city's already?
28 Weeks.
28 Weeks. So I saw that in theaters when it first came out, and
I liked them. I mean, I'm not gonna say they're my favorite. I'm gonna get to my favorites in a minute, but I'd probably, like we were talking about earlier, when I rate movies, a 3 is good. I'd probably rate them both at about a 3. They're fun movies to watch. They're a little bit of a different tone. But I enjoy both of those movies. I don't really think that I think I might like 28 Weeks a little bit more than 28 Days, but that's because I'm more of like an action, and 28 Weeks is a little bit more faster paced, whereas 28 Days is a little more of a horror feel to it. There's some kind of like jump scare zombie moments in there, but they're both good movies. But I think the 2 that I like the most, we've mentioned them both briefly already, are I Am Legend and World War Z. I think if I was going to pop in, if you were like, watch a zombie movie right now, I would pop in one of those movies.
Yeah, I think if I were to rank them in order, it would be Shaun of the Dead, I Am Legend, and then maybe not Zombieland, maybe World War Z or Zombieland. I don't know. The top 2 slots are pretty easy. I Am Legend is it's Will Smith.
Yeah.
You can't beat it.
Yeah,
you just can't beat it.
And it does some different things to it, and
you sort of get you. This is the world after the big apocalypse. This is the world after you got to like lock your doors at night constantly and be on the alert because they're roaming the streets. Most of them have fallen apart, decayed, lost their... Because in this story...
it does some different things with it. Like they only come out at night.
Yeah, they have vampire practically. Yeah. And that was really fun when they do all those really tense scenes with the shadows and the lights.
That one scene after Will Smith gets caught in that trap and he cuts his leg or whatever, and there's that little bit... as the sun's setting and the shadows get closer and closer.
Oh,
it's awesome. And then they got the zombie dog versus the German Shepherd. That's the most... I don't usually get into... I don't care about dogs in movies. I'll be serious. I'm more of a human
They made you care about this.
I care about the dog. I cared about the dog, which is different for me.
Because he's alone the whole movie. That's all he has.
That's his only other
I got to see that movie when I worked at the movie theater in Colorado. Our boss, and I don't think he was allowed to do this, but he did it anyway, for our Christmas parties. We had an IMAX in our building, and for our Christmas parties, he would section that off, and we'd have these huge... He'd buy a bunch of food, and we'd make popcorn for everybody. And he would screen, because we always had him just before Christmas, like the first week of December. He would screen the big movie that's coming out in IMAX. And the year I was there, it was I Am Legend. So we had 7 minutes of the second Batman movie trailer where they had the bank scene where they break into the bank at the beginning. That was there in IMAX, and then we followed that by I Am Legend with just me and all my work friends picking out on free popcorn. It was so cool.
Such a fun movie, and I love the way they do kind of how you would be as the last person on Earth. Like he's talking to the mannequins like they're real, and
he's losing it at the edges a little bit.
Yeah, he's driving his Mustang around and having a good time, and he's hunting deer through New York. I mean, it does some fun things with it, so it's really enjoyable. World War Z also does. It's a more serious tone, I think.
Yeah, it had some tone problems, I thought, because at some point, and Brad Pitt's character was. I mean, why does he have to be flying over the world on the slightest hunch? Like when they fly to, where do they go? Israel, or on an email. Someone briefly mentioned what might be a zombie, so they fly halfway across the world. I mean, I don't know. But there's some really cool parts in that movie.
The zombies are really cool in that movie.
When they pile up to get over that wall.
I like the idea that they kind of go dormant until they hear sound. I think that's a cool idea. Because kind of like you were talking about earlier, how you think that they would be back at their basic instincts. That's kind of what they are in this movie. Is
they just wander
hear
around
sound,
until something sparks their attention.
And as soon as they hear that sound, they know they have to get to that, and that's
it. That's their only.
It's like a rolling tsunami of zombies half the time. It's just, everything is just.
And so that then
they run over each other. They all fall. They don't care. They just keep going.
And they will. I mean, they'll clot the brick wall until their hands are bloody. You know.
Yeah.
But that then gives you a purpose for why your characters have to be quiet or keep up certain rules. If it's constantly changing throughout the movie, like it did a little bit in The Dawn of the Dead, you begin to not care anymore because anything can happen at any moment. There's no rules. You as the member of the audience can't expect anything, and I think you need some expectation in order to enjoy a movie.
I think the best scene in that movie is a lot of fun. It's a bit of a spoiler alert, so if you haven't seen the movie and want to, then fast forward 2 minutes or so. But is when he at the very end of the movie, when he's going to get the virus because and
they're in the building and he's playing like chicken with the...
Yeah, well, right before that, when he is trying to get past the zombie, gets inside, and you kind of got the zombie waiting outside, and he's got that chomp, and he's like, and it's really like intimidating, and he's in there trying to figure out which virus is which, and he can't figure it out, so he just says, screw it. He's either going to die, because he's got like the most deadly virus available, or he's got something that he has the antidote for, and he says kind of screw it, ejects himself. He lets the zombie in, and the zombie just kind of walks past him. It's such a great scene. It's so well done. There's a lot of fun right there. That kind of made them like I enjoyed the rest of the movie, but that scene right there is like this.
Well, that awesome. Movie kind of the character is sort of he's willing to give it all at any moment. I really like that. I like that.
Yeah,
part of that.
Anything else you want to add for?
I think we covered most of it, man. This has been a pretty thorough podcast.
Yeah, it's been a good discussion. Went a little long, I think, but we had some good discussions. So hopefully the audience members out there, all 5 of them now.
How many do we have in the last YouTube?
I haven't checked. I know
it was upwards. It was over 15.
Well, those are the shorts that we've been doing. Our reviews are a little bit more popular. I think those were up close to 30 last time I checked today. So those are doing a little better. But yeah, for everyone that is listening to this one, has made it to the end with us, thank you for listening. You can find this and all our other episodes of the podcast, especially the Countdown to Halloween episodes. Like I said earlier, we've done classic and slasher, and now zombies. So those are all up on the YouTube. We are not using SoundCloud anymore at the moment because we ran out of our free space.
Yeah, they want our money, and we don't have any.
We don't have any money to kind of throw at that right now. But if you like what we do, either in this or you like our little short reviews that we do or have started doing, then you can donate some money to us on Patreon. That would help us out big time. That's patreon.com/JMG. You can do different things with that. You can donate like a set amount of money, or you can do per post that we make. So you can do like $1 per post and set it at a $5 limit, so you get us $5 per month. You know, anything like that would totally help us out. That would allow us to do a lot more things than what we currently do. So check that out. You know, obviously no pressure to anybody to do that, but
pressure.
Greg's pressuring you. I'm asking nicely.
We've got to have the good cop, bad cop, or the good reviewer, bad reviewer.
Okay, you can be bad reviewer because
I guess actually that occurred to me. That's not a good way to phrase that.
Yeah, probably not. Also, like I mentioned briefly a second ago, we've started doing a little something different in addition to the podcast or the full-length podcast. We have shorter videos that we've been doing that are just kind of when we come out of a movie, we review it / kind of give our reactions to it.
Kind of an instant review.
Yeah. So we did that for The Walk and Beast of No Nations. Those are both up on.
Have we done? Well, there's 3 of them now, aren't there?
Well, we did Sicario when we saw that, but we added that on to another podcast.
That's right. That's right.
And then we also did Everest, which was added on to another podcast. So those are out there, but we've started separating them now. Just they're little 9-10 minute videos, so you can check those out. Those are all up on the YouTube. You can comment on those. I mean, we do this as kind of a discussion based thing. We like to talk about movies. That's what we do. But we love to talk about movies with you guys too. So if you want to comment on there, I'll definitely respond.
Yeah,
in the
that'd be
comments
great
we get.
actually to have feedback.
Yeah. So and
'Cause it's just us right now.
yeah. Well, like the video, subscribe, all that good stuff. We're trying to get as much stuff as we can out there. If you want to follow us on Twitter, I'm at Jordan's Guide, and you are.
I'm at Greg Crafted, GRAGCRAFTED.
You could also check out the website that all this stems from is the website that I currently own / write for. It's jordansmovieguide.com. A lot of cool stuff on there. I do full written reviews of most new movies. I do top 10 lists, all sorts of good stuff. So please check that out. Let me know what you think. You can comment on there. Kind of add to that discussion that I've been talking about. Next week, we'll be back with our final Countdown Halloween episode. We'll be doing modern horror movies, which I'm sure we'll watch a few of.
Oh, yeah. I got a lot to say about I've seen a lot more modern movies.
Yeah, so that'll be a good talk. That'll be our last one. That'll be a couple days before Halloween, so that'll be good. Anything else you want to add before we close this up?
I think that's it, man.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for listening. I hope you enjoyed this one. I know it went a little long, but definitely a good discussion about zombie movies and our Star Wars discussion at the beginning. So yeah, thanks for listening. I'm Jordan.
I'm Greg.
We'll talk to you next time.